It's Chris, Liege Games. Let's do this. As you can see, 11 still behind me. It's kind of switching things up this week because I wanted to have it out in a little bit in advance of the campaign. I put that video out yesterday, so hopefully that's okay. No one ever expects board game news on a Tuesday, but let's do it anyway because I did it before and it worked. Why not do it again? Let's talk about what's on the Hotness and then a few other smatterings that you need to know of notables from around the hobby scene over the last 2 weeks. As always, a lot of frequent flyers, but a lot of frequent contributors too. We're going to see the shut up and sit down effect as well, like we do every 2 weeks because that seems to be their cycle, and it coincides with the cycle of these videos. So without further ado, let's do it. So first up, if you hadn't heard about it, it's been sitting at the top of the Board Game Geek Hotness for about a week now, and that is Regicide. That is a game I featured probably 2 weeks ago, actually, on the video, because it was at the very bottom of the hot list, and I put it on your radar. Now, unfortunately, if you didn't buy it then, well, you aren't going to be able to buy it now, because not only was it slowly making the rounds in terms of reviewers, Space Biff, and a few others, but Shut Up and Sit Down picked it up on their latest view this past week of their top card games that they played this year. So it is sold out everywhere. It's on back order. So if you missed it, 1 to 4 player cooperative card trick-taking-esque game where you're playing cards that deal damage by the number that they are to the kings that you're trying to do enough damage to, but they strike back. And if you can't discard the same amount of cards equal to the damage, then you lose. Rinse and repeat. I mean, it's selling for somewhere between like $10 and $12 because also the rules are online, as I mentioned previously, and if you just want to play it with a regular set of playing cards, you can. And so that's the other nice thing, but if you want a fancy illustrated set of deck, if you want a fancy illustrated deck of cards as well, just for this specific game, you can too. You know, I'm speaking fast, tongue twisters sometimes. But that's Regicide, and it's on reprint, but the question just is it going to be in time for the end of 2021? I don't know. But again, I'm looking for a copy. It's my type of game. Will I end up with a copy eventually? But not anytime soon. So if you know anybody with it, look out for it because you might be lucky. Next up, number 2, Descent. So, I mean, Descent Legends of the Dark, it's still kicking hard. Reviews are slowly coming out. People are slowly spouting off more positives for it. It just cracked the Board Game Geek top 2,000 games, which again, I mean, that sounds trivial, right? Oh, it's a top 2,000 game. It's been out for like less than a month, people. So from that standpoint, it's already, surpassing a lot of expectations, but also as a dungeon crawler, it's going to be that price point. Now, again, price point be what it may. Straight retail games to the price point of $130 to $150 are few and far between, but now we're seeing Kickstarters on average starting at that sometimes. So it's really just about where you want to put your money because the mouth side of things is that they are going to be increasing price-wise, period. We're seeing it across the board. In case you didn't think climate change was real, board game inflation cost is real. And we're seeing it front and center. And this is another example of it. Again, now we talked about deluxeifications all the time on Kickstarter and crowdfunding. This is a deluxeification at a retail level, essentially. It is. With the terrain, with all of the extra stuff, with the high detailed miniatures, because you don't need a lot of it. You could do a lot of it at a lot cheaper price, probably, get it for 3/4 or half the price. But they've gone full out. FFG is putting their eggs into that basket, so we'll see. With the reception at this point, I would have to imagine they would be fools not to have something in terms of follow-up. I think they said something or something vague I read online about this being like one in a series of 3 or something along those lines. So, I mean, we'll see. We'll see where it goes. But, I mean, if you're going to follow the crowdfunding on that side of things, you might as well follow the crowdfunding and have something coming out soon to strike while the hotness is hot from that side of things. But we'll kind of see where it goes. Next up, number 3, Voidfall. Voidfall is launching at the end of this month. So it's going to be on a lot of people's radars. It's a 1 to 4 player 4X space game with more of a Euro theme, mechanistic approach as opposed to the usual 4X. I mean, it's gorgeous to look at. I covered it as well on my Kickstarters or crowdfunders to watch for September. My top 9 in the 9th month. I'll link that above. But it's just an interesting premise. And Mind Clash Games has a pedigree in putting out these heavier games with a different twist. Now, they're clearly not for everyone, and this is clearly not going to be for everyone regardless, but The art is going to get a lot of eyes like mine who otherwise wouldn't give a second glance at either a heavy Euro or a 4X game. It's sort of bringing together a little bit of a Venn diagram of the people that it normally wouldn't touch on. And so they've already got a bunch of designer diaries up there that you can check out. They're going to have pre-painted ships, at least at one pledge level. We don't know much about the other pledge levels, but again, I mean, you're easily going to be talking triple digits. I wouldn't be surprised by any price point at this point, because I mean, we just saw what Iridia did with the pre-painted, where you're talking realistically over 200 including shipping. What are they going to do with this? I have otherwise no idea. Several different game modes, including, I believe, solo mode, but you can also play competitively or cooperatively, going against this Voidfall, this void that is essentially an evil trying to take over the universe. So take it for what you may, but there you go. Oriflamme, number 4. This is another shut up and sit down effect. I have actually had this game in my collection for probably a year and a half, or almost 2 years maybe. I love this game. This is a 3 to 5 player game along the lines of coup or resistance, but it takes it a whole different way. You're given basically this set of cards. I think something like maybe 10 or 12 different characters with asymmetric abilities, and you choose a certain number of them at the beginning. I could be completely wrong on the number, but you don't choose all of them, I guess is what I'm saying. You specifically don't choose 2 or 3 of them. And so everybody has the same set of cards, but everybody is picking different cards in which they don't want to include, and then that's their hand. And so then what you're doing is you're laying them down in a row, and then at the end of the round, you are flipping over and going down the queue, because some cards will be a one-time use, some cards will stay in the queue and have a turn every single time that they go through, and they're going to manipulate who they're next to, they're going to kill other ones on the board, they're going to score you points, and it's who has the most points at the end. It is definitely a meta sort of social deduction-esque game, but with a different spin and less actual yelling at each other and just throwing out random accusations. I mean, everything is on the board literally, and you're playing off of that. And so it's just a nice change of pace. You can see here a couple of the actual cards that you're going to be playing and that you have the option to use. Again, it's nothing super deep. It's nothing super, enlightening in terms of, wow, I've never thought of this, but it's done in a really excellent way. There's actually, I believe, a follow-up expansion to this as well, Oriflamme Blaze, and I've been meaning to get that one too, but I'm not sure it's been ported over for distribution on this side of the pond yet. And so that we're just going to have to see, because I believe this is originally from a French publisher. And so I'm just kind of waiting for that side of things. But it's a game I have not had the pleasure of hitting the table as much as I probably would like. But it definitely fits a niche, and it's different than other stuff that I have. And I'm assuming that you're going to start to see it, in terms of availability, just be an issue. And I'm assuming you're going to see similar stocking issues from that side of things, especially if this is one that is not as ported over as some of the other games. Now, the other game that's on the hotness that got the shut up and sit down effect is this Nizia game, Royal Visit, which reminds me very much so in a sense of the Kickstarter game that I mentioned earlier in the year, towards the beginning, of Hidden Leaders from Board Game Goblins. And you're taking this premise of playing cards that have colors on them that correspond to characters, and you're moving these characters along the track. I mean, it just even looks like it. So I have to think that Hidden Leaders was semi-based on this, but now instead there are 6 figures that you're going to be moving across the board, trying to get all the way across, and you're able to play as many cards as you want, unlike Hidden Leaders where you're really limited to play 1 per turn. And I mean, it's from Aiello Games. It's actually a 2006 original release, and it's just going to be interesting to see what happens to the availability with this. Now, it's only got a 6.5 rating on Board Game Geek, but I think that's just because I think a lot of people don't really like this type of game. If this is not your social deduction, meta-esque type of game with cards and randomization and chaos, I mean, I can see why people don't like it, but I can see why, especially Shut Up and Sit Down, would like this style of game, because that sort of party-esque, meta-esque theme seems to be a lot of what they go for on the lighter style of things. And so it fits right with everything that I would think of what I associate with their brand. So again, at some point, I might try and pick up a copy in a trade or something, but I'm very happy with my Oriflamme and picking up Regicide as well in the near future, so I may not as well. But that is why Royal Visit is all of a sudden, out of nowhere, on the hotness. Next up on the hotness is Mythic Mischief. Now, I mean, if you saw my Kickstarter roundup or my crowdfunding roundup from this past week, I talked about it there. This is the latest from IV Games. I actually just got a copy of the prototype from them in the mail over the weekend. So I'm going to try and get a couple plays this week so I can have a video out maybe about a week from now at the latest, hopefully. I want to get it out before the end of the campaign, but, you know, so I can give my thoughts on it and give my perspective on it. I've heard a lot of people talking about whether or not they like the art style on this. And personally, I don't really care. I like the art. It's my style. I like the sort of cartoony-esque. I'm a big fan of the JRPG done well. And so it's not really an issue from that standpoint. You're moving tomes. You're moving tomes. Try not to screw this one up for you guys in the comment section. And you're trying to keep it away from the librarian, essentially. And you're trying to score as many points as you can. And throughout each round, not only are those books, I'm just going to say books. The books are moving, but the walls are moving on there as well. You've got asymmetric factions. I believe a total of 7 different factions that are available, 2 of which are coming in expansions. And just a little bit of everything in the sun when you're utilizing different teams to do different objectives. It plays anywhere from 2 to 4 players. People were calling it at least an abstract on the GameFound page. As I said in my roundup video, it doesn't strike me as an abstract. Like when I think of abstracts, I think of perfect information. And this is definitely not that, but is more abstract in its gameplay. And I believe it is a chaos controlled game where if you like that sort of thing and very tactical on your toes decision making, that's the impression I get, not having actually played the copy that's sitting like literally directly above me through the floorboards. But that's why people are excited about it, and that's what it's doing on GameFound. And I mean, it's coming from IV Games, so you know with their pedigree of Veiled Fate and Moonrakers, not only are you going to be getting a very solid game with very good reception that has been received already, but you're also getting a very deluxe notched game to begin with. And again, say what you want about deluxe. I mean, you're going to pay a premium for their game products. They are more in lines with something like Chip Theory games where you're going to pay for a better product and it's going to show. Are you okay with paying for a better product? Now, they did something different with Veiled Fate where they were going to put out some semi-retail level during the campaign, but there was not really going to be a retail level-ish during post-campaign. So they're not really doing that as far as I've seen with Mythic Mischief. And it'll be interesting to see what post-retail or post-delivery looks like in this game compared to their others. But all in all, as soon as I get it to the table, I will let you guys know my thoughts on it. So, but that is why it is on the hotness this week. Next up, we have Khora, Rise of an Empire. Now, this is more of an economic strategy resource management style game from 2 to 4 players. The premise is you're basically just developing ancient Greece and your various ways of trading, upgrading, that sort of ilk via resource management. And you're trying to upgrade your part of Greece faster than your opponents. It is available for pre-order. I've seen its advertisements or its ads. I think even maybe, I don't know if it was on Facebook, but definitely on Board Game Geek. And so it's getting a little bit of hype just from the clicking of that side of things. Other than that, I'm not really sure why it's trending right now because Tom Vasel's review was out like 4 months ago. Rado's run through was 3 weeks ago. So it's sort of an odd timing from that side of things, but I guess maybe it's getting a little bit more momentum. And that's why it's in the hotness. So if it interests you from a thematic or a mechanism standpoint, check it out. Now, if you're playing along at home, this should be number 8. This is Agemonia. And Agemonia is also launching literally today, the day that you're watching this video, if you're watching it, which I really appreciate, by the way. This is a open world-esque, more tabletop RPG-esque background setting by the designer who has run that for years and decades to establish this universe. And it is a scenario-based cooperative adventure with consequences that matter and that carry over from within each scenario to scenario to scenario. And it's going to be interesting to see what this does, what the price point is. I'm sure all of the big names have copies and are going to have videos coming out today as well. This is the one that has people more interested on the fantasy-esque, the high fantasy-esque side of things that we have not really seen yet on the open world. and it's distinctly different, but it also has some similarities with other things that have come out there in terms of Soul Raiders as well as Iridia that just finished. So it'll be interesting to see how much overlap there is between these two, because also following this up in sort of a different direction is Mythwind next month, and what is it going to do differently? How are the comparisons going to be made? Because eventually all the comparisons are going to be made in that sense, and eventually I'm probably going to have to do a video giving you a little diagram of X rows by X columns, has this, doesn't have this, has this, doesn't have this, but that is what you need to know. It looks really interesting. I don't really know much about the mechanics themselves, but the beginning 3 scenarios are actually on Tabletopia, and they've been on Tabletopia, so you can check those out if you want to as well, even prior to the campaign, which might be too late now, but even during the campaign as well. Again, I think it's going to be interesting to see what the campaign looks like, what sort of expansions, what sort of add-ons, but also the price point and how long it's going to run, because we're seeing a lot more shorter campaigns now as well. I'm not sure why that is. Enough overlap, enough wanting to not drag it out, but that's why it's on the Hotness, and that's what you should know about it going into later today and clicking over on the Kickstarter page, which may or may not be launched by the time you actually watch this video. Number 9. Great Western Trail. I mean, 2nd edition. Stuff's coming out. Early copies are going to the big name reviewers, and there's enough information leaking out that now people are saying, okay, well, what's the difference? Why should I get this? What should I know about this? Does Feister make a better 2.0 edition in that sense? This is the first in the trilogy of the trails from that side of things. They're going to be releasing, I believe, 1 per year over the next 3 years, including this year. And again, I'm not a big this style resource management Euro-esque game, and so this one has never really held the appeal to me, but it's apparently fixing some of the dynamic issues that the first one had. It's just going to see how well this one is received by those hardcore trail enthusiasts, or if they're going to keep the first edition, sort of like things like Bruges, which we've seen, which has been somewhat divisive at times as well. So that is number 9. And last up on the top 10 is Furnace. Furnace is another new game that is just getting released right now that is becoming slowly hotter and hotter. I did not mean to do it that way, but if you caught it, well, it's a dad joke. This is a 2 to 4 player capitalistic engine building Euro style game where you are solely trying to produce the most goods and products over a set of 4 rounds. So the interesting thing about this game, as you can see here in this picture, is down at the bottom here, you'll see a row of about 6 to 8 cards that are going to be played every single round. And what you're going to be doing is you're going to be bidding and placing one of your numbers on these various cards, but you can't place it if the same color is already on it or if the same number is already on it. And then they are resolved from, I believe, left to right, or one end to the other, whichever one it is. And so not only the action matters, the number matters, who goes first is going to matter in terms of timing, and that is more of the production phase. So the putting down of the numbers is the auction phase, and the production phase is where you're really building and getting resources and that side of things. So you do 4 times of that, rinse and repeat, and then you score the end of game. Now, again, this is not my type of game, but it's intriguing. It's a completely different concept in terms of the theme. And so it'll be interesting to see what more reviews come out as. It's on pre-order right now, and so there's not a wide availability of opinions from that side of things. So that is Furnace. Check it out if you're interested as number 10 in the 10. Now, you may have missed this completely. We're going to go to the top 5 of other things that you need to know. This is number 1. This is CMON and Backerkit have formed an arrangement, an exclusive pact, whatever that means. So basically, CMON doesn't want to use their pledge manager anymore, it sounds like, and they're using Backerkit. So you're starting to see other things port over there already in terms of their collections and their games. And so you can already see Animation Collection has gotten ported over here with some of the info and some of the breakdown of the campaign. So interesting from that side of things. And we'll see what spins out of it that you need to know, or how it changes things from a CMON standpoint going forward. Speaking of combinations, we have another combination here as the news point number 2. Privateer Press is joining forces with Mythic to produce the new Monster Apocalypse big box game. And so it's going to be interesting to see what happens from that side of things, because Mythic has definitely changed the way they do crowdfunding lately in terms of their last several projects. Say what you will about that from that side of things. And so it's going to be really interesting to see what their take is and how Mythic influences Privateer with a product line that was already recently well established. And they say right here, as you can see, Monster Apocalypse, it will be 100% compatible with the existing game. So, I mean, that's at least nice, but is it going to be a 2.0? Is it going to be, just what else is going to be there? Now, they talk about, okay, 2-player core box, multiplayer expansion. I guess the thing that I have seen Mythic do in the past couple campaigns is they've sort of said, we're not sure if this is going to come to retail. It's going to go to the retail store, but maybe it's not going to go to distribution or however they label it. So again, is it going to see something along those lines? You're going to see all new monsters, multiplayer, expansion. There you go. They're just going in, and we're seeing more and more of this. So are you going to see bigger companies picking up these smaller companies, or what's going to happen from that side of things? So it's interesting because it's just a different scope of things from a development standpoint. You know, is it going to be more like the tech bubble where you saw all these big tech companies gobble up the small ones before they become monsters or competitors? And is this the same sort of thing? Is this different? I have no idea. That business side of things is completely out of my ballpark, but that's why I'm bringing it up, so that you guys can tell me all about it. Now, why am I going back to CMON as point number 3? Because now this is slightly different, and you're going to notice that this is Cyberpunk 2077, the card game, but we are apparently going to be seeing Cyberpunk 2077, the board game, as the next CMON Kickstarter. I guess they announced it at CMON's convention, the online convention that they did earlier last month. And so that's going to be interesting. I am not, really as familiar with this IP as some of the other IPs from a video game standpoint that have ported over lately. But it describes it right here. As you can see, you become fixers. Fixers are data brokers and masterminds who recruit cyberpunks, equip them with gear, send them on missions. Nothing's free. You have to balance between what you can get and what you can afford. And just, how you can upgrade yourself and upgrade your body in that sense as a cyberpunk and not truly fully human. And so it's going to be interesting to see what that looks like. But, obviously it's going to be miniature heavy because, it's cool mini, not cool standee or not, as much as I wish sometimes. And so, again, the date is going to be the biggest question. But with their Masters of the Universe about to launch in 1 week, we'll kind of hopefully get more details as it gets closer to that point, and we'll see if that ends up actually being the case, or if it ends up, changing positions with something else. All in all, again, all eyes are going to be on Masters of the Universe until it's done, and then all eyes are going to be, on their next project, because that's the way the Hotness goes. Now, this is another strange name, and I thought this was, as people said online, this was going to be sort of, there was a series called Betwixt. No, apparently this is just the name they're going with. Now, this is Game of Thrones Betwixt, which gives sort of the Between Two Cities vibe, where you are taking cards and using them to ally yourself and to influence others around you to achieve the most powerful small council in Westeros, as they say. And so it's taking the Between Two Cities, because what you're doing is you're making that small council between the person on your left or the person on your right, and then using similar tiebreakers to Between Two Cities to actually see who won. And so you can see a little bit of the cards, a little bit of art that is not associated with at least the show, which is nice. I'm not sure if this is very similar to the other cards from the LCG, either of them. I'm not as familiar with the artwork on those, but it would be nice if it was completely different. Here they run through sort of what the end scenario looks like in terms of who would be winning and that sort of thing. And it's just going to be interesting. It's only $30. It's looking like sort of the meta game, like I was talking about in terms of card games of the Regicide and Royal Visit earlier. But with the Game of Thrones IP, it's going to attract more eyes, but is that a good thing? Or does that just mean it's going to be put under higher scrutiny than something that didn't have this IP attached to it? So that's going to be interesting to see, because I could see myself liking something like this. It gives me a little bit more theme, something my wife would be more familiar with, something that might be a little bit easier to hit the table than something more abstract. So there you go, number 4. So last up, we're going to be talking about a Pandasaurus game that is also on pre-order, because I think these are the most interesting things that I've seen lately. It's called That Time You Killed Me. And they're calling it sort of a narrative abstract game. And they say down here, unique rules, unique components with each time you play, mucking across time. And so you're playing through 4 chapters and increasing components and increasing difficulties. You are rival time travelers trying to erase each other from history. So you have to get them before they can get you. So you have many copies, and you just got to do what sticks and beat your opponent at it. They've actually already got the rule book up here, so if you're really interested by this premise and the artwork like I am, check it out. Now, it is almost $40 pre-ordered before shipping, but they say you're going to get a free promo envelope. And so that's going to be really interesting. I like the idea and the concept of this. It reminds me a little bit aesthetically of zombie kids or zombie teens in the simplicity but not lacking gameplay. And I am a big fan of abstract, so I have to have this one on my radar. And this is one that I really would be tempted to pre-order if I did know more about it. And I'm probably going to read the rulebook after this, but you can already see that apparently I'm too late because US is out of stock right there. So I might be SOL anyway, but we'll see. As always, the pre-orders are always a risk at retail because I think, as I've said previously, oftentimes retail has less information available than crowdfunding does during their campaigns. You get a better sense of crowdfunding games as they're crowdfunding with all the videos and the rulebooks and that side of things than you do sometimes with these retails where maybe one person or maybe two people at most have any sense of it before it's actually released. So there you go. That's number 5, the 10 and 5 for this week. So one last special thing here at the end, because this is so cool and I found out about it before the Board Game Geek post earlier this week. I found out about, I think a week and a half ago when all of a sudden Weird Games had one of their designers for this game called Vagrantsong pop up doing a Reddit AMA. And so I checked out their game, and this game looks amazing. I mean, I know a lot of you have probably never heard of this either, but if you have, you already know what I'm talking about. But if you haven't, I know a lot of you have commented we have similar tastes and similar dungeon crawlers and similar story narrative based games and that side of things. And this is that. I mean, this is a train-hopping, cooperative, story-driven boss battler where you're a vagrant trapped on a supernatural ghost train, facing off against ghosts lingering on the train and uncovering secrets. It looks really cool. It looks like a combination of Townsfolk Tussle and Adventure Tactics, which is super exciting to me. Now, they haven't actually started the pre-order, which is the sort of weird thing. And they're going to be trying to release it around Gen Con, I think they said, or Essen. I'm trying to forget which one. But either way, that's what you're trying to do. They actually have a full rule book up here as well, so you can check it out. And there's 20 different scenarios, alternating turns between the good guys and the bad guys, a little bit of action, a little bit of management, a little bit of upgrades. It just looks very solid. Now, the price point is going to be, I think, $70. Now, the pre-order here is really interesting because if you go to pre-order, I love the URL here. In case you can't see the URL, which I don't think you can in this case, it's give us your money, please, thank you, -weird.com. But it's $75, but you're not actually paying for it right now. Man, newsletters on every single site that I go to this day. But they send you a pre-order listing. They're going to send you a link later by email, so you're not actually paying for it now. But, I mean, it looks really cool. I think, though, that they have a scenario or a couple scenarios on one of the online simulators, whether it's Tabletop Simulator or Tabletopia. But I believe he mentioned that in the AMA. But that's my game to keep on your radar because I could very easily see this one making big waves a couple months from now when it starts hitting people's tables. Okay, that's it. That is your 10 and 5 news roundup, the things you need to know, the things that are out there, the things that are popping up, the things that are going to make waves in the future. Hopefully that was interesting. If you want it again, check my 11 stuff out from yesterday. Something else coming out later this week with a little bit of everything smattered in between. Maybe another Should You Back. Hopefully the Mythic Mischief game impressions later this week or next weekend as well. The usual stuff at the end of the week in terms of the roundup, which is going to probably be a big one with all of the stuff launching today. I just, I almost fear making this video or starting to make it. So there's just probably so much stuff and so much information. And then the upcoming stuff for next week, which again is going to be massive. Like I already talked about one or two of the games, including Master of the Universe from CMON. Again, there you go. Lots of stuff, lots of interesting stuff. A few things I didn't cover, but let me know, as always, what you think, what you're interested in, what you want to see more of. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for putting up with me. See you around.